Light can be a daunting subject, and for good reason. Learning light is hard and will take a long time. But there's one technique that is quite simple to apply, yet looks very cool if done correctly, which is using rim light. This lighting technique is not specific to any artist, but I will be studying the work of Mogoon and Rella to illustrate my points, and frankly because I too am learning with you guys. So please take everything I say with a grain of salt. Also, this isn't by any means a way to replace learning the light fundamentals, but it is a fun way to make your character illustrations look cool, even if you're still learning how to properly use light. With that being said, let's get into the video. Rim light is a lighting setup where you put the light behind your subject, which makes the light hit the outline of that subject. Of course, the angle of the light source can differ, as long as it's mostly behind the subject or to the side of it. This creates a so-called halo effect, either around the entire silhouette of the subject or only to the side facing the light source. This outline is often the brightest point of the illustration, which is a really easy way to separate your character from the background and create three-dimensionality in your painting, as well as contrast around the character, which helps define the character as the focal point of the composition as well. This is the reason why you see this lighting setup a lot in films, since rim light very clearly separates the character from the environment. It's a very effective way to communicate information about the scene in a very short time, which suits film since you only see a particular shot for a couple of seconds at the most. Of course, deciding to use a rim light is only one aspect of your entire concept, so there are many more things you'd need to consider before you can create an illustration using this lighting setup. The first thing you have to consider is if there are any other light sources or not. Having a rim light as your only light source is very niche and it could have a use, but to have a scene with more information, you need to at least have a second light source. Another thing you need to consider is how intense the rim light is, as this can create a variety of moods. Perhaps you can even think about the color of the light. Is it pure white, or maybe created by a setting sun, making it red or orange? All of these questions are things I like to consider before making an illustration. And now let's analyze how professionals use it. To understand how we want to go about applying rim light to our illustrations, we must first understand what a good illustration with a similar lighting setup looks like. For that, I will be looking at artwork from Mogoon and Rella, as I mentioned in the intro. Let's start with this illustration from Fullmetal Alchemist by Mogoon. A good way to train your eyes to get used to light is to ask yourself where the light is coming from and how many light sources you can identify. In this case, it's coming somewhere from the top left, and as far as I can tell, it's the only light source. But this light is still reflecting off the environment, which is why we can see the characters in the places where the light isn't hitting directly. We can also see that it's not a very intense light source, since the places that aren't hit directly by the light are quite dark, which means that the reflected light is quite weak. All of this leads to a lot of strong contrast in this illustration that makes the character pop and not mix with the background. And since the light is only hitting the two characters in the upper areas of their bodies, the entire focus of the viewer goes directly to that area of the illustration, making it a nice way to define the focal point. One thing you'll notice in these illustrations is that the light feels three-dimensional. This is because the light isn't simply slapped on the silhouette of the character. Instead, the artist considers and thinks about where the light should be hitting and where it shouldn't. For example, look at the chest area of Edward. Despite it not being on the edge of the character, the light still hits because the torso is bent backwards a little. But the intensity of the light falls off the further away it gets. The same can be seen for Alphonse, where the entire of his left side is way more grey than the right side, because the light source is further away. This might not be exactly scientifically accurate, but it helps a lot with the composition, because the highlights and contrasts are grouped into one area instead of being scattered all over the piece. In this illustration, the mood is very dramatic and kinda intense because of the high value contrast. But if we look quickly at another illustration, we can notice that you can achieve many things with a similar lighting setup, For example, this illustration of Makise Kurisu by Mogoon. You can see that the light is coming from behind the character, but the mood feels completely different because of the color and intensity of the light, as well as the brightness of the rest of the piece. In this case, the light is very soft and has a mid-value orange color, and since the rest of the piece has similar values, it ends up being a lot more softer on the eyes. Another interesting use of rim light is in those two illustrations, where the rim light isn't the main source of light, but it's used as an accent to help add interest to the other side of the character that isn't being directly hit by the light. It also looks incredibly badass if you ask me. I mean, just look at this is so fucking cool. And you can see this in every illustration that uses this lighting setup well. Of course, this is by no means the only reason they look so good, but it's at least a small part of it. So now let's try to apply it to our own art. Guys, I've recently been having a lot of nightmares about waking up, looking at my empty desk, searching all around the house and not finding a Huion Kamvas Pro 16 Plus 4K. But thankfully I stopped having these nightmares when Huion suggested to send me a Huion Kamvas Pro 16 Plus 4K. If you didn't know, Huion is a leading drawing tablet provider who are also kindly sponsoring this video. The Huion Kamvas Pro 16 Plus 4K is a 16-inch pen display that, as the name suggests, has a 4K screen. First of all, let's look at the box. This is the cleanest design for a product box I've ever seen in a while. Also, their logo is a crown made of 3 pens, and the brand name in Chinese apparently means King of Painting. I mean, come on, that alone gives them infinite aura. Inside the box, you'll see the tablet, an adjustable stand for the tablet, the pen which has 8000 pressure levels, then there's a drawing glove, some cables, and lastly a pen stand with spare nibs inside it. The drawing experience is just sublime. The 4K screen is as good as you'd think it is, and with the Plus model, you get more vibrant colors. These two combined feel like your eyes just unlocked a new ability. Moving the pen on the tablet feels smooth, yet it has the right amount of resistance that makes it feel close to how drawing on paper would feel. The adjustable stand is really easy to use and actually has a good level of adjustability, unlike my previous tablet where I had to stack books to adjust the height. The downside to this tablet is that it doesn't have shortcut buttons, but Huion was also kind enough to send me a key dial mini, which kind of solved that problem, especially the wheel. It's so handy in zooming and changing the brush size. Overall, I think this is a wonderful tablet, but if you're on a lower budget, I'd say you absolutely don't need a 4K screen. But Huion also offers many lower price options that I haven't personally used, but if they're anything like this, I can very confidently recommend them. If you're watching this video on the day of the release, so on the 16th or 17th of July, then there's a huge sale going on in Amazon right now, which is an awesome opportunity to get yourself a new tablet. If not, then you can check out all their pen displays or pen tablets on their website. And thank you to Huion for sponsoring this video. Alright, now let's go to the actual attempt. Here's my reference board. For those wondering, this is a character from the manga Land of the Lustrous. Actually, saying the character's name would be a spoiler, but just know if you've read this manga, then me and you can be best friends for sure. Just let me know. Honestly, I haven't painted anything in a while, so this is very messy and not very suitable for a tutorial. But here are the things that you need to keep in mind when trying to paint rim light in your illustration. First thing you need to consider is what you're trying to achieve with the rim light, and illustration in general. What are you trying to say through this? This is always a very important step when making practically anything, because it will determine how you want to communicate that feeling you want to convey to the viewer. Maybe a rim light doesn't even fit that goal. Try to think about that. Second, after you have a sketch, think about your lighting setup. Is it only the rim light? Is there anything to reflect the light back onto the subject? Are there any other light sources? All of these are things you need to be able to answer. Lastly, and almost the most important step, is to actually have a set direction from which the light is coming. Without this step, your painting will definitely not feel right. If you want, you can experiment with subsurface scattering and the hue of the light. But as you can see, for this one, I like the pure white, so I kept it. And this was the final result. I'd consider this much more of a sketch than a full illustration, but it gets the job done, and I think it looks quite nice. I can't really criticize much, since it's just a sketch. But if I wanted this to be a full illustration, I'd have to do a lot more planning beforehand. But I needed this video to get done, so I didn't have much time. Anyway, I hope you like it. Of course, learning rim light will not make you a master of lighting, and if you want to fully utilize this lighting setup, you need to learn a lot more about color and light. I've made a video on that topic, but I'm still very much a beginner, and that video isn't a guide to color and light or anything like that. But I think rim light is a fun and relatively easy way to get some interest in your illustrations. But for now, I really hope that you found this to be helpful and enjoyable to watch. I thank you for staying with me until the end. I really appreciate it, and I wish you a peaceful rest of the day. Take care.